So Hugh, if you can answer this, what kind of games do you want your studio to make? I mean, are you guys going to do work for hire, your own IPs, or like what? You guys already have some investors throwing projects at you? Like, what's the goal here?
Yeah, we are considering 3 projects right now. One of them is quite a large project. I can't give any information about it right now, but we're definitely creating our own IP. We're definitely open to co-productions. The types of games that we're looking at are all online multiplayer type games predominantly. We're also exploring some story-driven, tactical stealth type games that we sort of have created some initial language for and initial designs for. But we're really interested in creating that high polish, high quality. What does Unreal Engine 5 have to offer? Our games are going to be in Unreal Engine 5, so we really try to think both from how do we encapsulate and create opportunities and universes that people can fall in love with. I'm a big, I don't play League as much anymore, but I was a big League player, and I really fell into the whole franchise and the characters and the universe. So our front of mind is how do we create that franchisable opportunity and that sort of story that people can really fall in love with for the next 5-10 years, but also how do we today use the technology at its best to create something that people might not have experienced just yet, right? Or experience the same thing that they've experienced, just with an elevated tone. So that's really what we're excited about and interested about.
What role does technology hardware specifically play in both visual effects and in your game studio? I mean, because it's always consistently, you're getting new cards every so years. The new RTXs now allow ray tracing. Like the consumer line of GPUs and CPUs has gotten so advanced. I mean, I was in post-production years ago, but like that was stuff when you had to have like a machine room with like slots of CPU RAMs to do renders and all this other stuff. I mean, now you can do it at home on a personal computer. Now, does that help you guys in your job, or does it more hinder when there's so much technology being released so quickly on a consumer level?
I think, of course, it's exciting for every artist to be able to work faster and be more creative. Absolutely. I think it makes it much easier for everyone to get on board faster. And as you said, it's very easy these days to get a computer with a sort of a mid-range graphic card, download Unreal Engine, do some courses, and sort of get into the work right away. I think the danger with that is that it seems to be easy now. It seems to be very achievable and quick to do, right? But you still need to have the experience and understanding of the process to be able to really work with it. The exciting part is that it's easy to get into, so you have more people being involved in it. The danger is that there is a perception out there that because there's Unreal Engine, because it's easy to download, because it's easy to get a graphic card, it's very easy to build a game. It's very easy to build an amazing looking visual effects content, right, with Unreal Engine, right? It has definitely made things easier, but I would say you still need to go through the same process. The process got shorter, but you still need to have the same expertise to do the process. I think that's the way I approach it, right? It just got shorter, not necessarily easier. It just got shorter, and you can get there faster. So with the graphic cards, what is really exciting is that these days, not only you can get it at home, not only you can sort of get your high-end graphic card at home and be able to do amazing work in Unreal Engine 5, you can do it on the cloud. Part of what we are basically establishing, what we are excited about, is that we are building in the studio entirely on the clouds. And this is 2 years ago, that was impossible. 3 years ago would have been, you would tell me you could land on moon, I would have, I would believe that, but not necessarily building an entire studio on the cloud and utilizing high-end GPUs. So with AWS, with Azure, with Google Cloud, this is now becoming a norm that you can build an entire functioning stack of services and machines and virtual machines on the cloud and run an entire studio that deals with advanced technology, let it be engineering, let it be art direction, let it be content creation, and do all of that on the cloud. Not necessarily at a fraction of the cost, but very cost effective. And be able to hire artists globally. And I think that what actually makes it possible today for a studio to create AA plus or AAA level content, without worrying about, writing an engine from scratch, spending millions of dollars just writing an engine from scratch, right? Or spending millions of dollars in building a facility that is located in one place, and you're very limited to what you can do in that one place, right? So I think that is part of the premise of Blinkmoon, to be able to tap into areas and technologies that just wasn't possible 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, we've come a long way from being handed a hard drive to go to the render farm on the other side of town to drop it off and then pick it up the next day if they didn't have time to do their own render. Yeah, we've come a long way from that. It's all cloud service based. You just upload it and it spits it out and you're like, cool, great. But it is more expensive. It can get really expensive. The less time you have, the quicker you need it, the more expensive it gets, right? You render this out today, you gotta. Yeah. Well, we'll send it to Montana. They have like a 500 computer render bay, and we'll get it in a few hours, but it's going to cost 50 grand. Yeah. I do want to talk about, because, I spent a lot of time in the film industry, specifically in post-production. And I will say, based on that experience and what I've read in the news recently of the Sonic movie, I know visual effects studios and workers are probably the most unappreciated, underpaid, and overworked employees in the film industry. Because like you said, I don't think people realize it takes 400 people to get that shot of the dragon to look nice. Yeah. It takes them 13 months to do that, and it's on screen for maybe 5 minutes. And I think people don't realize that. Spider-Man, Far From Home, all these big AAA pictures. Are you perhaps leaving this visual effects industry to work into a better environment? Maybe when you're treated better, have more time, less overworked. I mean, you're still gonna be working long days in game dev, but not nearly as long as when you have a deadline on a AAA production.
So, we all have our reasons, right? But what got me excited to sort of do a transition was primarily building a product entirely on your own and having a full control over the creative process. Because on the visual effects space, even if I'm a visual effects supervisor, a lead visual effects supervisor working on something like Game of Thrones, you have a lot of say in many things, right? But you're not part of the writing the script. You're not part of the creating the music. You're not part of designing every shot from day one with a director, right? You still have a director, you still have a studio, you have to, so you're high in the creative space, but you have a lot additional opinion about it, right? So what got me excited, was to create a product where we can be involved in every aspect of it, right? From the story, from the visuals, from the music, from the voice acting, and it got me. It gave me an opportunity to work with so many more domains that wasn't possible in post-production, right? I always wanted to be a director, that was sort of my wish, and I think that's and of course the big fun part of working in games and having that interactive process that is not really there when you work on the visual effects. What is interesting is that in the visual effects, you know exactly what you're gonna get. That's maybe something that I don't know if it's being discussed or talked about a lot. Is in the visual effects space, you know exactly how to communicate something to the audience, right? You know exactly how they're going to see it, at what time they're going to see it, what is the lighting. They
can't turn, the shot is the shot.
You know exactly what to do. So it's actually much easier because you know exactly what they're going to see. There's no surprise, right? Like a surprise in Game of Thrones, the gamma of the TP on the episode 3, if you remember, that was very dark and everyone was very confused that, it's hard to see what's going on, right? That's the type of a surprise you get in the visual effects, that something wasn't as clear based on the conditions, right? On the gaming, you have to sort of elevate the same narrative, the same complex narrative, the same interesting lighting, but you have to do it in a way that even though you have full control over the camera, you have full control over what is going on, that is still, it's exciting and interesting. That makes it very interesting, very challenging, and very different than we do in the visual effects space, right? So
when can we look forward to seeing what your studio will be producing in the upcoming future? Where can people go to find more information? Are you guys hiring? Give me some details for people can go to find out some more info about your projects and your studio.
We're definitely hiring. We're heavy in hiring right now. So we're looking for anybody who's got experience in Unreal, has shipped a AAA game, is ready to come in and sort of hone their skills, and even people in the visual effects industry that are interested in jumping into Unreal, that have worked on large projects, and we're really bringing in a stellar team. We have we're already in touch with some of the world's best animators, and we're really excited to start showing off some of the work. And we're working on a poster right now for 2 of our games that will soon be announced. And it's an exciting time for us because, again, we have people in-house already that understand both visual effects and understand games. And so we're really trying to look at other projects like, Kenna Bridge of the Spirits, right? And it's predominantly visual effects team that started that, from what I understand. And it's exciting to see that happening. And I think that you're going to start to see a lot more visual effects artists come into the space and bring their talents and their expertise to the gaming world. And that's exciting for me because I'm a gamer. I've been a gamer my whole life, and I just can't wait to see all the cool stuff that's going to come out of it.
Let's speak to that, because a lot of the times people underestimate the amount of anatomy that you have to know when you're rigging a human model or a humanoid model. A good example is, Hugh, you mentioned League. I knew the team that did some of their cinematic trailers, and they used to do it like, they would do realistic movement, but they're like, that's boring. And they would do these really exaggerated movements that would break a human being's spine in several places if they bent that way, but it looks great. Can you talk about like that process and how you'll bring stuff like that in the visual effect world into the gaming space for that realism, that you said, that forward realism, or that mechanic, or that beautifully lit shot or character model or environment?
Yeah, I think so. I'll speak to one of the projects that we're working on in particular. Has sort of this Pixar, Disney art style and fidelity to it. And, it's sort of that, if you think about characters like WALL-E, they're very animated, right? And so it's a combination. I'm seeing a lot of games go with the hyper realistic, this is exactly how human moves, and that's what's fun. I think there's much more you can explore beyond that. But when you start showing those sort of elements, if you think about a film like The Good Dinosaur, it's got these very stylized characters, but hyper-realistic environment. And what it does is kind of creates this familiarity for you, but it creates this sort of fun thing to look at in the foreground, right? And that's what's exciting about it. I think if games start to hone in on that a little bit more, we're going to start seeing some really cool stuff. And for us, that's what we're also focusing on in one of our projects, is really bringing that Disney style of movement, Pixar style of movement and stylized sort of character creation, but in a semi-realistic environment. And how do we create, with all the nanite technology in Unreal Engine 5, how do we create that in a way that's going to just absolutely wow people? One of the things that I'm a big competitive gamer. I love competitive games, and I often see competitive games that don't really, and it might have been some maybe technological barriers, maybe multiplayer networking barriers, but I think the tech is getting better, and it's going to continue to get better to a place where you start seeing multiplayer games that are competitive that have the same fidelity as like Horizon Zero Dawn, right? And really getting that experience. So how do we kind of encapsulate that in Unreal Engine 5? That's sort of the type of things that we're really challenging ourselves with.
Yeah, I mean, as Hugh mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, is that it is we are using a lot of the same technologies today in the post-production, and vice versa. We're using a lot of the post-production technologies in the video game space. I mentioned a tool. You mentioned a tool, Houdini, that has been a very strong visual effects post-production sort of package for the past 25 years, and it has become a foundation of building procedural content in the video game space. So now you can sort of hire and work with artists that have used Houdini to do, procedural environments and procedural assets and procedural rigs and crowd simulations in the post-production, in the film space. And you can almost use one-to-one the same talent and the same procedures and the same processes into building the same tools into the video game space, right? It is, or I mentioned the Ziva dynamic, where, when we did Make back in the days, you had to simulate. You had to run a simulation. It was still amazingly fast. We're talking, 5 to 6 minutes for a shot to be simulated, right? At a time, I think it was 2018 or 17. It was a state of the art. It was above and beyond that we would be able to simulate a full creature with all of the muscles and everything moving around, in 5 minutes. And now, 3-4 years later, we're sort of getting the same quality in real time, almost the same quality in real time. That's Ziva and what they're doing with Unity. And it sort of elevates the bar. It elevates the bar on what video game can do, but also it elevates the expectation of what you expect in the filmmaking space. You know, these days, if you go into YouTube and just Google Unreal Engine 5, you know, you see a lot of amazing content. A lot of amazing content that seems like, one person has done in his backyard, in his garage, basically, right? Not a studio, not a big corporation. So that sort of raises big time the expectation on this film space, also the video game space, that hey, if he can do it really quickly, now you should, as a studio, you should be able to do 10 times more because you have the budget, you have the funding, you have the talent. So it's sweet and bitter because now you can do it, but it definitely has raised the expectation and on the post-production and on the gaming space of what everyone expects to see, right? There's not anymore a question that a shot in the visual effects has to be perfect. If it's 99% there and there's 1% problem, people are gonna pick it up on YouTube, on any different reviews that, oh, this is not perfect because there was a little thing that is not perfect, right? Not knowing what goes into it and how much.
A good example of that is the Starbucks cup in the Game of Thrones when Daenerys, had that in front of her, or I think it was Daenerys' cup or something like that.
Yeah. There was a lot of people on that set too. Like it was a really crowded set, so I'm not surprised that the script supervisor missed it or somebody missed it because I was like, there's like 100 people on that set. That's all, and they're all like this, so it's hard to see when you're in the chair 50 feet below looking at monitors.
Yeah, I always find moments like that funny because it could have quickly been painted out, but it goes through many people and it still gets missed. And when it's finally on a massive screen and thousands of eyes looking at it, then it gets spotted, of course.
For that stuff, I love because it shows that, hey, look, even like people who get paid millions of dollars to do this sometimes make mistakes. Like it happens, like even on the highest scale of productions, and it's okay when that. I like when that happens because you're like, somebody like 50 people missed that, including the executive producer.
And then you get a bunch of funny memes, so everyone's thankful either way.
We are also a big advocate of diversity. We want to be able to really enable everyone on the globe to be able to join and work with us. Me and you, we both really strongly believe that talent is everywhere in the world, right? It's not just in North America, it's not just in Europe, it's everywhere in the world, right? I come from Iran, and both of us are originally, I was, born and raised in Iran, and where I grew up, just that and I tell that story all the time. If someone would told me you would go to moon, one day, I would believe that, right? I wouldn't believe to land and work on Game of Thrones, down my career, right? Back in the days when I was 12 years old, I watched the first Independence Day. And oh my God, I was in love. I watched that movie a million times. And I told my dad one day that I'm gonna work with the same director one day. People laughed at me back in the days, right? 25 years later, I worked with the man himself on the Independence Day too, right? And it's not necessarily the coincidence of life. It's really a testament that it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter where you are and which part of the world you are. There's always a chance to sort of be part of this massive successes and productions and so on and so on. So what we truly believe is that back into that gaming in the cloud and the company in the cloud is that it's not just the infrastructure and the efficiency of it, is that they are talents out in the world, that you can tap into, that especially in this time of really limited talent in the North America and the limited talent in the Europe based on everything that is going on, that we do believe that there's a huge talent out there that we can tap into. And again, that's part of the advocacy of being a full diverse studio. And
it's really that technology and this development of technology, especially in games, has created opportunity for a lot of people that in other times might have to be location and geographically based in order to work on some cool projects, right? And so for us,
the only issue becomes security, I guess, for the client. If they're scared a shot's going to leak or something, that's really the only thing if you work remotely. But I mean, it sounds like you guys got that down with VPNs and private servers and all that good stuff. So that's really interesting. And it sounds like you guys are even ahead of the curve with COVID hitting. Like you guys are already all over the place remotely. You're not in a single location where, everyone's can just turn around and talk. You're in a remote location with everyone around the world. Do you
Well,
guys?
we do things like Discord, right? So we'll have like a Discord room that we'll jump into, and we're gonna have more of that happening as we get more artists, and we'll always be in teams together, and we're trying to recreate that studio feeling when working remotely, and that's tough. You get a lot, you get to know people a lot better when you get to go to Christmas parties and all this kind of stuff. But we're trying to recreate that online as best as we can.
How do the older clients, specifically in television and Hollywood, feel when you say we're completely remote? We don't have an office with like a bunch of computers. Do they kind of give you the side eye, or how does that work?
From an investor's point of view, I would say that it's a non-factor these days. I think it's becoming more and more obvious that, especially after COVID, it's become more obvious that, look, you don't need to go rent out an office space and spend so much, effort and money and resources in order to set that up. You should have it for certain people, right? There are people who actually want to work in the office, and maybe that is something that we will offer in the future here in Vancouver. But generally speaking, working remotely, especially if you're working in computer graphics, you're at your computer, that's where you need to be. It becomes a lot more convenient because you can go out and you can manage your own time, you can do the things you need to do, kind of take care of your life in a sense, instead of having to drive an hour to the office and drive an hour back. So those are things that we obviously are helpful, especially in our industry.